Cloudcast Media.
Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, amplifying the voices of social impact organizations, entrepreneurs, local nonprofits, and other community champions who shape the culture, creativity, and connectivity of San Diego. Brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, bringing good things to San Diego for over 60 years. Learn more about what is good for you and good for all by visiting www.missionfed.com.
I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media, and we are absolutely honored and thrilled to have in the studio today three of my favorite folks over here. Two of them retired admirals, Mark Balmert. How long have we known each other, Mark?
Yeah, I don't know, 10, 15 years?
At least 10, 15 years. Mark is the CEO of the San Diego Military Advisory Council, and a new friend, Admiral retired Terry Kraft. He is the CEO of the iconic USS Midway Museum, and we've heard Terry on the show before, and cannot thank you enough, Terry, for what you do in the community, and especially you support an organization that's near and dear to my heart, the Classroom of the Future Foundation.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And if not the top CFO in our region, one of the top is Doug Wright, a frequent guest on the Spotlight on the Community show. He's the CFO of Mission Fed Credit Union. Whenever something is popping up in the economy, I call my friend Courtney Pendleton, who runs community and public relations, and say, can we get Doug on so he can actually explain what the heck is going on in this economy? And Doug, you do it with flying colors. I'm telling you, you always calm people down. Absolutely, And so I go, hey, this is what Doug said today, so you cannot jump off the bridge. And I'm honored to be joined by my co-host, who's going to be a co-host indefinitely.
Has a nice ring to it.
It does. That's Kristen Fogel. She's the executive director, one of the strongest writing organizations in San Diego County, and that's San Diego Writers Inc. How you doing, Kristen?
Doing well. Thanks for having me back.
Very, very good. Just
Not
real quick.
sick of me yet.
It's only been 3 seconds.
Yeah,
Exactly. Real quick before you turn it over to the admirals and to Doug, how long has your business been going on in Liberty Station?
We are celebrating 20 years next year, so getting excited to do some fun things with that.
It's all about writing and all that business.
It is.
Let me start with you on this, Mark, and then we'll pivot over certainly to Terry on this. What is AB46 and why is this so important?
Yeah, so Assembly Bill 46 would exempt military retirement pay from California state income tax, and it would also exempt the benefits that surviving military spouses receive. A lot of times people don't talk about that part of AB 46. And why it's important is it's for many reasons, but from a view of the state of California, we're at a battle for talent. And people who leave the military with retirement, their average age is just a little bit over 40 years old. Right. So they embark upon a second career. And they bring all of that incredible training, all of that experience to their next job. And we want that next job to be in California. Unfortunately, California is the only state, along with the District of Columbia, that fully taxes military retirement pay. So as they're looking at deciding whether to stay or go, it's an important factor on the wrong way. It makes them go. So we would like to see that exempted, and we think that in a short period of time, the number of veterans, retirees that would stay and earn and pay taxes on their new job and fees and everything, it would pay for itself. Unfortunately, we have trouble convincing the Assembly that that's the case.
Yeah, Terry, let me ask you this. As Mark was saying, is there, metrics behind to say because of California fully taxing, we are losing X amount percent that normally would stay? Is there a number?
Well, I can tell you this, 500,000 veterans have left California since 2021.
Wow.
And so I just did some informal math. Say 1 out of every 5 of those veterans is retired, which is a typical retirement percentage, but it's probably a little higher since we have a higher military concentration here. And they go to work, and their average starting salary may be $80,000. That's over $480 million in tax money that the state of California is losing. That doesn't include spouses. Over 50% of military spouses work. And I want to add on Mark's point about a veteran workforce. The best thing about veterans is we have diversity built in, right? Yeah. We have diversity in our leadership positions. I was looking at some research last night. More female veterans go to college than the general population, and they're more likely to work in a leadership role. 1 out of every 4 vets have a job before they ever get out. 95% of veterans are employed within a year of getting out. There was some Pew Research from last year I looked at, and overall employees feel that veterans are more disciplined, loyal, hardworking, tolerant, independent, flexible. I'm not trying to say that veterans are some amazing, group that's better than everybody else, but in general, this is a very talented workforce that is walking away from California at a high rate. And we're a state, last year that the demographics turned and we're at a net loss for residents now. Right. We certainly don't want to lose these people that go back to work.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And, Doug, when you hear these figures, as a economist guy, as a CFO, it's got to be head scratching, is it not?
It is really head scratching. I think when you take a look at those numbers and you take a look at the other central issue in California, and one of the reasons that people are leaving California and veterans are leaving is the affordability issue. Right. And we're acutely aware of that in San Diego, where the cost of living is really high, and it impacts not only our active service members substantially, it also impacts our veterans. And this is one way that we could combat or mitigate that cost of living disadvantage that we have in California, and particularly in San Diego, and make it more viable for veterans and their families and survivors to live here. And I think that's really key and critical as we take a look at California's future. We really need to continue to build and retain a very strong workforce on a go-forward basis to maintain our economic vitality, and this is really critical. So I'm fully in support of AB46 because of that.
Yeah, there's no question about it. I'm Drew Schlosberg, listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, now the nation's longest-running community podcast in our 17th year. I'm honored to be joined by Admiral Retired Mark Balmert, CEO of San Diego Military Advisory Council, his colleague, Admiral Retired Terry Kraft, President and CEO of the USS Midway Museum, and Doug Wright, CFO for Mission Fed. Mission Fed's been doing just great things for San Diego for more than 60 years. We're in this really nice Mission Fed studio here in Scripps Ranch, and joined by my co-host, Kristen Fogel, the Executive Director of San Diego Writers, Inc. When you hear this stuff, Kristen, again, a little bit mind-boggling why this is still going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm bought in.
Thank you.
So what is the status of this bill? Where are we at with it right now?
Well, it's dead for this year, unfortunately. At the final step was in Senate Appropriations Committee, and it apparently did not have sufficient support to make it out of the committee and into the Senate for a full vote. So they made it a 2-year bill. So next year, the Assembly will pick up kind of where they left off in the Senate Appropriations. So look, we've been trying this every year for quite a number of years.
Exactly.
This year, it was sponsored by a Democrat. It had co-sponsors, the Senate Minority Leader and the Senate Pro Tem. Tony Atkins. So it could not have had more support. Every vote was a unanimous to move it to the next every committee it went through was unanimous. It went and it went and it went. And then it got to where the state would have to, so there's some upfront costs because in the beginning, you're exempting some people that are already here from some of their taxes. So because there's a cost, they don't want to go forward this year because it's a bad budget year for the state. If in my opinion, if it's going to make it next year, the governor's got to show interest in taking care of the retirees this way.
Yeah, and Terry, just based on what Mark is saying on this aspect of it, you mentioned the numbers that this is what would bring me into California. It's such short-term thinking that sure there's going to be a shortfall initially, and I know we've had some research. Lynn Reeser had done some work with you, Mark, if I'm not mistaken, economist out of Point Loma Nazarene. On this and say, here's where, after a couple of years or whatever the number is, you start making a positive on this. Yeah. What can we do? What can we do, whether it's us here at Spotlight on the Community or Cloudcast Media, Kristen and her folks, Doug and the team at Mission Fed, to get people off the dime on this thing? It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, I watched the proceedings, and what was disappointing is the state finance department only reported on the tax money that would be lost. It was this, for finance guys, maybe the CFO will agree with me. It was like one of the most simplistic analyses I've ever seen. They didn't account for people that stay, people that work, future earnings, all of those kind of things. And this is not a political issue, as Mark said. This has unanimous bipartisan 100%. Support. This is the easiest no-brainer that I've seen. And of course, they put it into a suspense file. I think what people can do is, what I'm going to do is I'm going to contact the governor. I'm going to write a letter, and I'm going to call him and say, hey, let's look at this for next year, and let's get off the dime and join every other state. California has the fifth, although we have 1.8 million veterans in California, we have the lowest percentage of veterans. So we're the fifth lowest percentage of veterans in the United States. We're at 4.4%. Oregon, which has no military bases whatsoever, is at 7.7%. So that tells me all these other states are willing to take a bigger chunk of their tax possible revenues to not tax military retirement. But in California, we won't go there yet.
Yeah, listen, I think letter writing campaigns do make a difference in this aspect of it. And I'm sure you folks have thought about this 10 times over, Mark and Terry. But I know we would be willing to push this thing out. Cloudcast Media, as Mark knows, we've been doing military shows since 2008, of course, on this. And it's incumbent upon us for 75 different reasons. But one, it's good for veterans. B, it's good for the economy of the state. If you don't like veterans, okay, fine. You know what? That's ridiculous if you don't. But it's for the economy of the state. That point you mentioned, you learn this stuff probably in grade school that, okay, well, there's a cost to this, but what's the upside of it? How do you not report that in these hearings?
We have 40,000 tech vacancies right now in California. That they're trying to fill. We have 20,000 vacancies in the medical world, right? Not all are doctors and nurses. This is something that can help fill this gap in California, and it's a no-brainer to me.
So if people want to get a hold of you, Terry, and the Midway, or you, Mark, at SDMAC, and so forth, and I know, Doug, you probably have to sit there and run it by the folks here at Mission Fed, of course, a little bit different animal. Can they get a hold of you and say, how do I support this effort?
So I'd like to drive them to our website, www.sdmac.org. We have a policy section, and we have templates for letters to the governor and to others. And that can help us, more letters, a kind of a grassroots approach. Veterans, they don't have a union that speaks up for them. They don't have lobbyists that can speak for them. This needs to be a grassroots effort.
Right. Terry, how about you?
I would point him to SDMAC, who's really led the charge, and Mark was the one that got me energized on this a few months ago. Also, MOA, Military Officers Association, has been very active. They're an advocacy group. Those two organizations, I think, are really leading the effort here in California.
Right. Doug, obviously from your standpoint, from a CFO standpoint, this seems pretty obvious to me.
Yeah, I think, both from a short-term economic picture standpoint and a longer-term economic picture, when you talk about the statistics that Terry and Mark shared and the impact on the California economy longer term, you also have to think that it's a bit of a political issue as well. If we're truly the only state that is not offering this benefit, that brings out into you kind of political decisions at the national level as well. And as we all know, San Diego thrives in good part because of our military presence here. And any questions about that military presence on a longer term basis and any loss in support on a national level can have impacts here. So I think it's also important to consider the impacts politically of being, essentially all alone in this kind of position that we take right now. So that's another consideration I think we really ought to consider, and we all ought to get behind making California on par or at parity in treating our veterans the way that every other state does at this point.
Without question. When we come back from break, I want to ask Mark, and Terry can jump in on this too, something that you brought up that ties into something that's near and dear to SDMAC's heart, and that's the San Diego Military Economic Impact Study that they've been doing for, 10, 15 years now. I can't remember what the number is, Mark. It talks about to that level, $55 billion of indirect spending, maybe $36 billion of direct. Mark will give me the right numbers when we come back. When you have that, and we'll talk about that when we come back from break, that should be enough impetus to say, are you kidding me? This is certainly a no-brainer. When we return to the discussion with Mark Balmert, CEO of San Diego Military Advisory Council, Terry Kraft, President and CEO of USS Midway Museum, and Doug Wright, he is the CFO of Mission Fed Credit Union. I'm Drew Schlosberg, joined by my co-host, Kristen Fogel, on another edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, here brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, doing great things for San Diegans for more than 60 years. We will be right back.
When you do your banking with Mission Fed, you get great rates on auto and home loans. That's good for you, but something good also happens for a lot of other people. We're not for profit, so we put money back into the community to help lots of great nonprofits to keep San Diego strong. So you're not just getting something good, you're doing something good. Come to Mission Fed. It's banking that's good for all.
Brand amplification is the DNA of Cloudcast Media, and our code is the powerful blending of sound, voice, and storytelling to lift local brands and their communities. Whether it is our Brandcast, Schoolcast, or Causecast platforms, the unifying ethos is all about this community, the one you call home. If you dare to dream and want to explore the brand amplification of Cloudcast, a national leader in local podcasting and other Winfluence strategies, please visit us at cloudcast.us.
I'm Drew Schlosberg, and you're listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, the nation's longest-running community podcast. We're now in our 17th year, brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, and beautiful Mission Fed studio and Scripps Ranch, and Mission Fed for 60 years is certainly raising the bar for us folk here in San Diego County, joined by Mark Balmert, the CEO of San Diego Military Advisory Council, his colleague, Terry Kraft, President and CEO of USS Midway Museum, and Doug Wright, the CFO of Mission Fed Credit Union, joined by my co-host, Kristen Fogel, the Executive Director of San Diego Writers, Inc. Right before break, Mark, Doug was alluding to, listen, we got the numbers that show how important the military is to California as a whole, for that matter, but absolutely in San Diego. Talk about the San Diego Military Impact Study.
Yeah, so our annual report will come out October 18th, and once again, it's going to show somewhere between 35 and 40 billion of direct spending. It's about a quarter of the economy here, and more than just a quarter of the economy. It's pretty integrated in other aspects of the local economy. With the military has research labs here. We have students at the universities. We bring in tourists through people that come to the convention center for trade shows, to come and visit family members, active duty, go and visit the Midway Museum, come to MCRD graduations. It's a sector of the economy that's pretty broad and incredibly dependable. Year in, year out. During the pandemic, we saw an increase in defense spending as one means to help defense communities here. So I think people should not be surprised by the numbers, but impressed by them nonetheless here in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And I know, Terry, those numbers are important to you folks. I mean, the Midway you have, and really, credit goes to everybody on that Midway. And Mac McLaughlin, of course, your good friend, just retired, and now you're stepping into the catbird seat and all this. What you guys do for our economy and just our culture is just huge, absolutely huge.
Yeah, we get over 1 million visitors a year. 90% are from outside San Diego. There was a study done since we opened, and by the way, next year will also be our 20-year anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We'll have our 20 millionth visitor next year. We've contributed over $70 million to San Diego economy since we opened 19 years ago.
No, that's great. Kristen?
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit more about your overall mission, or maybe just some programs that you're excited about?
On board Midway?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So our education program is what we point to with pride. We average about 50,000 kids a year on board Midway. We have kids on board from every school district in the San Diego Unified School District. If they can't afford a bus, we get them a bus. We know how to do that. And they all come aboard Midway. We're actually into our teachers that run the program. We're into our second generation, if you will. One of our teachers actually came aboard Midway as a second grader when she was little. We do sleepovers, a lot of sleepovers, especially in the summer for Girl Scouts, other organizations. And we give over $2 million away in scholarships since we started our scholarship program. So a lot of these go to disadvantaged schools. San Diego High School is one of them. I got to hand out a bunch of scholarships to them, and that was just so much fun.
That's amazing.
Yeah, we've been the beneficiary. I say we're the Classroom of the Future Foundation of Midway's, absolutely largesse in their support. Actually, the very first, I think I mentioned this to Terry, the very first event on the Midway before the museum opened was our annual event.
Oh, very nice.
Tested it out, and of course, they've been doing 2 billion events since then.
Yeah, you do so much. I've done yoga on the Midway.
Sure. We do a lot of corporate events in the evenings, and that's about 20% of our revenue on Midway. So we're busy around the clock, and I love it now. School's started again, and the school buses are showing up, and the kids are running around, and it's just a lot of fun.
That's great.
Thank you.
Kristen, I know you have a question for Mark at SDMAC.
I do, yeah. Mark, I'm learning so much about SDMAC and everything, but I wonder if you could speak to what your mission is.
Yeah, so we advocate on behalf of the local military. So and maybe when we started also around 20 years ago, that meant watching the installations, the bases themselves for encroachment and impacts on flying and training. But over time, it's grown to mean advocacy for the active duty, military families, working spouses, and veterans. And it's focused primarily on the San Diego region. There are obvious, like we've been talking about, state impacts local people, federal impacts local, but our focus is on, what's best for the local military here.
Yeah, and again, and Mark and I have chatted about this quite a bit. They are certainly a leader in this area. when I was working for the Union Tribune, which I was working for about, seems like 6 million years with them, was, they would come to SDMAC. They were the go-to people when we had questions on how the military interacts with the non-military folks, and you guys always had great responses. And Doug, you personally, and of course everybody at the Mission Fed is just phenomenal. You guys are the antithesis of checkbook philanthropy. When you guys get involved, and I want to thank you for your stewardship at the San Diego Council on Literacy.
Yeah, certainly, no problem. I think when we're talking about the military, we've been focused on the economic impacts, which are critical and make this discussion a no-brainer around AB46. But I think we also have to talk about the social, educational, and other impacts that the military makes on our community. First and foremost, we have to recognize that our active military and the veterans that were active are protecting the nation. And that's they're making sacrifices that the rest of us aren't making at this point in time to protect our nation. And that's really important. But beyond that, the work that they do in the educational community, the work they do in our neighborhoods, the neighbors that they are, and the people that are military, active, and veterans really are a very critical part of our social network within San Diego. And they make San Diego a very nice place to live. And that's one of the reasons we all love living here. So I think we can't underestimate the other impacts besides the economic impact that the military has on the San Diego community.
Yeah, I'll just pitch in. That's a great point. I read all our TripAdvisor reviews, and a lot of them will say, I went on Midway and talked to a docent. I met a real veteran,
right?
And in San Diego, we're just used to it. We're just, you can't swing a dead cat without hitting a vet. But in, Middle America and these kind of places, they don't have that kind of exposure. They don't need veterans, and it's impressive to them. And it kind of reminded me, these people, they're coaches, they're our teachers, they're just part of the community, and I love that.
Well, you said something, Terry, you're spot on, and thanks for teeing that up, Doug. Mark, if I learned anything when I first got to meet one of your predecessor, Larry Blumberg, the first executive director of the SDMAC, it pretty much came out of all of our mouths incessantly is you guys served twice. Just like you said, obviously you served to protect our interests here on our soil and, of course, abroad. But just like Terry was saying, you are all over the place and revered. So the question's going to be, we need to get those folks that are in our Assembly and State Senate to do as much of a reverence. And listen, and it's not political. You're 100% correct, Terry. This is just the right thing to do. One, from an economic standpoint, and two, to support what's in here. I'm going to go around the room here as we wrap up. I'll start with you on this, Mark. Any more final comments on AB46, and maybe you can shout out your website one more time.
Yeah, so www.sdmac.org. AB46 would exempt military retirement pay from state income tax. We're the only state that fully taxes military retirement pay, and would also exempt a pretty meager benefit for surviving spouses of deceased military. The average is a $20,000 benefit for those people. It's not much, but it's taxed, and that's a shame. It doesn't need to be.
Right, exactly. Doug, any final comments?
Yeah, I think I just reemphasize what you actually said, Drew. It's just simply the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do economically. It's the right thing to do socially. It's the right thing to do for the sacrifices that our military makes every day to make America a great place to live.
Absolutely. And Terry?
The names I've seen associated with this, the co-sponsors, Assemblymember James Ramos, and Minority Leader Brian Jones. I saw Brian Jones do an open house here in Scripps Ranch on 4 October. I'm going to be there, and I want to talk to him about it. And I'm going to stay vocal and very much in support of this bill.
Well, we all need to stay vocal. We need to be shoulder to shoulder with you two folks across the way, and of course Doug and all the great work that you do in the community as well. And Kristen, listen, this is the first you've sort of heard about this, right?
Yeah.
And I imagine it would be tough not to get your support.
No, absolutely. I mean, I've got a team full of writers. I think that more people should write good old-fashioned letters and just reach out because I think it makes a big difference.
That's great.
Yeah.
So, this won't be the last time we're going to talk about AB46. And I think, as you know, Mark, we like to keep this stuff in the news as much as we can. And we got to keep on hammering this until this thing gets passed. It's the right thing to do. And it's, and quite honestly, quite shocking that it hasn't happened yet. Admiral Kraft, so good to see you again. Thank you for all the
Drew.
great things that you folks are doing. And Mark, my longtime great friend, you look good.
Yeah,
and
thanks.
I look forward to seeing you at the next XDMAC breakfast. And Doug, thank you. And, the phenomenal team at Mission Fed, Courtney Pendleton and Catalina and Neville and Deborah and all that business. You guys, and you do it without a lot of fanfare. You do it because it's the right thing to do. You're always supporting great organizations. And Doug, I thank you so much for that. You've been listening to another edition of the Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, the nation's longest running community podcast, now in our 17th year. We hope you enjoyed the show.
You've been listening to an episode of Drew Schlosberg's Spotlight on the Community Show, amplifying the voices of social impact organizations, entrepreneurs, local nonprofits, and other community champions who shape the culture, creativity, and connectivity of San Diego community. Brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, bringing good things to San Diego for over 60 years. Learn more about what is good for you and good for all by visiting www.missionfed.com.
Cloudcast Media.